I think the story that we're going to tell about Trevor began at the very beginning of 2006. It might have actually started a little bit at the end of 2005. And he passed away in January of 2007. So it's roughly about a year-long story about Trevor and all the things that happened in that time frame there. The doctor said, I don't know any other way to tell you this, and I'm a parent too, but your son's going to die. That's what he started off with. He says he's got squamous cell carcinoma and there's no known survival rate past 5 years for it.
It was something that as a ward affected us all. I remember that I remember we had ward conference, and I had just learned of Trevor's diagnosis, and I asked President Garnes if I could share something before I was actually giving my talk in ward conference, and he certainly said that would be appropriate. And I remember letting the ward know what had happened to Trevor and where he was and how important it would be for us as a ward to not just rally around him and his family, but to collectively as a ward seek the Lord's guidance and most importantly the Lord's comfort to bless Trevor and to bless his family and to bless us as a ward. And that was the first time that the ward, everyone, learned of Trevor's illness.
One of the things that had to happen was that because there was going to be a surgery, and it was going to be an extensive surgery, we were told it was going to take anywhere from 5 to 12 hours, and it was going to be very extensive, and it was also a very risky surgery as well too. And so one of the things that we had to do was there had to be enough blood to be able to do this. And so thank goodness for the Mormon communication network. Word got out very quickly, both through family and the Ward family as well too, and it went out to the stake as well. And there was a blood drive, but it wasn't like a blood drive all in one day here. People were told you could go down to Kaiser Sunset facility and you could go to the specific department there and tell them that you wanted to donate blood for Trevor. And people came. People came from our stake, from our ward, from our stake, from other stakes. People from the community came, and like Roxanne had said, that they were like, what's going on here? Who is this Trevor Matthews? Because they hadn't seen this kind of participation where people would come to their facility to donate blood for a specific person since 9/11.
That Sunday, the Sunday that his surgery was announced over the pulpit, I was in the congregation, and I remember thinking that this isn't good, and it just hit me really hard that I should go to the hospital that day. I'm not what you would call someone to do that. I've never done that. I've never. It's difficult for me to talk to people who I know, let alone somebody who I don't know. But for whatever reason, I just felt very strongly that I needed to go to the hospital that day of his surgery.
Here's one act of service that we'll always remember. Larry Carr, who's the first counselor in the Valencia bishopric right now, he just shows up out of the blue. And, hey Larry, what are you doing here? He says, I don't know, I just felt like I needed to be here, and I'm sorry, I don't want to impose. No, thanks for coming. And he had this prompting that he just felt like he needed to be there. And it was very touching, and he didn't stay very long. I think he was there maybe 15, 20 minutes, and he felt a little uncomfortable enough, but it was so touching to me that someone, you know, and I liked Larry, but I didn't know him all that well, but I knew he was a good guy, and he shows up and there he is. I mean, it's that kind of thing there.
Yeah, when we came home from the hospital, the street, well, in front of our house was full of people. Everyone was there, everyone from the neighborhood. There were signs on the house, balloons everywhere, and it was just, that was overwhelming. It was like, oh my gosh.
And we didn't even know that.
No, we
we had
hadn't
no
either.
expectation, but we pull onto our street, and there's this mass of people. And Trevor had kind of slept most of the way home, and his eyes, he'd woken up after we got off the freeway, and when he saw that, I mean, he smiled, and it had to have hurt tremendously to smile for him. And yet he was just grinning as best he could. He's like, wow, what's this? And Trevor had lost a lot of weight already at this point there and was very weak. And so, but it really touched him. Yeah, you could just see it in him. He was like, who are all these people? Wow, what, just for me?
I was in the primary during this time, and I remember the Bishop Williams, challenged each auxiliary to, as we approached Thanksgiving and Christmas time, to come up with a service project. So the presidency and I, we prayed together, what can we do as a primary to serve? Recognizing we're dealing with young children, and what can we do that would have an impact in their lives and also whoever we served.
When Trevor got sick, I was still in primary. I think I was around 9 years old, and I remember in our primary class we would always discuss it, you know, usually once a month, about what we were gonna do for Trevor that month. You know, every week we had a certain class going over to their house and seeing what they could do to help, and just sitting with Trevor and keeping him company. And I remember when my class went over, as a group we went over and just talked with him and sat with him and played video games with him, and it was a great experience to see just like he was really ill inside, but he was still living a pretty normal life at home, and he still wanted company, and he was lonely just having to sit at home all day.
People were very creative in their service. It's an awkward position, trying to figure out what can I do, how can I help, and it's awkward on both parts, the giver and the receiver. Because as the receiver, you're trying to figure out, well, we want to let people be of service, but it's like, well, you want to be so self-sufficient. How do you find ways for them, you know, and open the door so that they can come in and help? So it's just an interesting road and a growing experience on both parts, both the receiver and the giver.
As he would proceed to go through different treatments and his health started to deteriorate, we, especially the young men and the young women, started having more activities that were geared towards Trevor. We'd have combined activities, and we would take those activities to Trevor's house. I remember we had a dance there, and we took the young men and the young women there and basically took the party to him.
We had people both through the church and through the community who knew people, and you know, there were things Trevor, as a boy, as a 14, 15-year-old boy, you know, loved cars and video games and things like that. And one of the people here that Trevor really liked cars, and so I said, well, I have a friend out in Calabasas who has a exotic car collection there, and he said, they got in contact and said, hey, I'd love to give Trevor a ride in a really, really fancy car. So we said, sure, that'd be great. We were able to arrange a day that we knew Trevor didn't have any treatments, and Trevor had a lot of treatments going on, so that was a lot of scheduling issues with that too, make sure it didn't coincide with the treatment. But we knew this day this person was coming, and this beautiful yellow Lamborghini comes pulling up to our house, and Trevor's coming out, and he's like, whoa, look at this. And you know, and Trevor was very weak at this time as well too, so we were a little concerned because a Lamborghini's not known for comfort, it's known for just, you know, pure horsepower. He said, don't worry, you know, and Trevor got to go out for like an hour and a half with this guy, and he took him out, and he opened it up, and Trevor's going, wow, this car's fast. It's service like that.
About a month before he passed, we got the entire Valencia choir to come over to the Matthews house and go inside, and we managed to fill out their entire entryway and dining room area. And that time of year we go around to the swap meet, we go to marketplaces and community events and sing carols. And so we decided to carol for the family, specifically to Trevor. And they all came down and they sat on their stairway, and he was right in the middle. And it was incredible. And I think at the end of it, Dr. Priest, our principal, had presented Trevor with a star from the National Star Registry, and there were some gifts that were exchanged.
Jeff Peacock, through his company, was able to arrange for Trevor, myself, and my son David, Trevor's older brother, to get an angel flight in a helicopter with the Ontario Police Department, and he had a contract with them, and so they had found out about Trevor, and he'd made arrangements with the lieutenant and the department, and they invited us out for a special evening, had us come to Ontario, tour the facility, each of us going up in the helicopter, and then showing us the Christmas lights of Ontario. And then having to stop every once in a while to respond to a call, and we got to watch just how high-tech this equipment really was here when they were supporting the units down below. It was a lot of fun, and just an amazing thing. And then dinner, and Trevor was just, we were all blown away. It was just, so touching. And these guys, to see these policemen, big tough guys, and all shedding a tear when they're seeing Trevor and seeing how happy it was, and they're just filled with his spirit at that point as well too, and the spirit had touched them as well too, and seeing what this little kid is going through, and how well he's doing, and taking it, and thinking, I could never be as strong as he is. And I said, he's just got this amazing spirit.
On Sundays, the teachers' quorum would leave opening exercises. They'd have quorum meeting with him. And I know that Trevor took great comfort in knowing that he was loved and cared for by his quorum members. And at the time, I think there were probably 14, 16 members of his quorum. So, it wasn't just 2 or 3 young men going over there. He had a big quorum that loved him and supported him.
My boys, my oldest 2 boys who were in the youth program at the time, had a lot of opportunities to serve Trevor. Specifically, my oldest son, who was in the teacher's quorum with Trevor, they would go over every week after Trevor could no longer go to church, and they would administer the sacrament with the help of a priest or an adult leader. And they would have their lesson there, and they would take turns giving the lesson, and they just were there for Trevor, and just wanted to make him feel as included as possible. But of course, Trevor ended up serving them so much more, and they learned real life lessons, and not things that you can learn in a book, but the things that you learn by living and experiencing. And I think they got so much more out of it.
One of the great ways that there was service given in our teachers' quorum to Trevor, and from Trevor back to our quorum, was once we realized that maybe cancer was going to win, we decided instead of mourning openly in front of Trevor, that we would start preparing for our missions. And so every quorum meeting, every opportunity we had to be with Trevor, we talked about missions. And we set the stage for Trevor to understand that his mission call was going to be the first up. And we actually talked about it in age order, who was going to serve first by age. And we'd always say, Trev, you're going to be the first one, and we're so excited for you. And at first I think Trevor was nervous and scared, and then all of a sudden he began to own that he was going to go on his mission, that he was going to be the first one, and that he'd be the one to be out there. And I honestly believe that Trevor has served as a companion to
each one of those 10 or 12 quorum members that are serving now?
With Trevor's illness, everyone, of course, jumped to the occasion to come and serve him and do anything they could for him. But Trevor turned right back and found ways to serve them. And it was so amazing that someone, he was so limited a lot of times because of his illness, and yet he still found small ways to serve other people however he could. And sometimes he didn't even realize the service he was getting or giving. And he structured his life in a way that it was almost nothing but service, whether it was actually, giving someone something or just the way he conducted himself that brought such a sweet spirit to everyone around him. And it's created a legacy that people still remember today and has caused an effect that is remarkable for just one person. And it's been really inspiring and strengthened my testimony as well.
We have so many good memories of people reaching out and offering special things, special screenings to a movie, to a car show, to going to the tennis club and having the fire department there and getting to go ride on a fire engine, and it didn't stop.
Trevor is definitely a good influence to us in our lives. Everybody, just the way that he acted and the way that he was before he passed away. And if you think about it, I think about sometimes just like how I think I have problems, and then I think about what Trevor went through, and I'm like, I feel I'm being so selfish for trying to think that I have problems after what he went through. And he seemed like sometimes when he was going through all that it didn't even bother him, and that he just shook it off, and he was ready to go, and that was incredible.
I know that the testimonies of those young men and young women were strengthened because of the time that they shared with Trevor Matthews. I know that many of them didn't understand why he got sick and why he had to die, but they understood and felt the Spirit. And they felt what it was like to forget their own problems and to try to help share and lift the burdens of someone else.
I don't like taking charity. And I don't even think that's just a pride thing there as well too. It's just like, we don't need, but when someone gives you a gift and you can see it's coming from their heart, pride, you got to let any kind of pride go at that point there, because you give honor to the gift giver by accepting that gift. And that's what we learned a lot of at this point too, was receiving that service was helping the people giving the service as much as it was helping us. And, that's not an easy thing to accept at first, but once you start understanding that, I think it became a little easier. I think I understood Heavenly Father's plan so much better, why His work gets done through others, through all of you, through all of them. That's how He blesses the lives of others. He doesn't need to come and touch personally your life, because He has all of His children here to help touch your lives.
For those months that Trevor was sick, the young men and the young women reevaluated their own lives as to what was important. Many of them, because I remember talking to them individually, talked about the mortal existence that we have here on this earth, and that it is a window of time that we don't know how long it is, and how important it is that we do all that we can to prepare to return to live with our Heavenly Father again. And as we met together in that combined meeting after Trevor had passed, some of the kids talked about that. They talked about how they were going to live their lives different. Many of them talked about how they were going to do all that they could to follow Trevor's example. and to focus on the things that Heavenly Father would have us focus on rather than what the world would have us focus on. Many of them talked about the testimonies that they gained by being a part of acts of service for the Matthews family, and how that they felt better about themselves because, and the things that were bothering them and causing them to be depressed and that causes teenagers to not be happy. Those things didn't really matter. I mean, here was their friend who physically at the end couldn't do anything. He was just lying in a bed and couldn't do anything. And so it didn't matter what clothes they had. It didn't matter if they, were the popular person at school, or this girl liked him, or this boy liked him. All of a sudden, those things didn't matter. What mattered was what they could do for someone and how they felt when they did it. And they learned what it was to share another's burden. And they learned that service is and should be selfless. They didn't do it for the recognition. They didn't do it to check it off on a box or a line of something that they had done. They did it because they loved Trevor and his family.